we're gonna do a little yin yang class. Now this is gonna be more yin than yang because it's afternoon, and I would like to kind of slow down and do something a little bit more in keeping with that. But there'll be some yang-y, flowy bits along the way. You may want to have a blanket, you may want to have a pillow, you may want to have some yoga blocks handy for yourself to have just some support when you need it. So we're going to begin in a seated butterfly pose. Now if you prefer, you can lie down. But I'm going to do this without a lot of support under me just because I'm feeling like if I decide I need it, I'll add it. But I also just kind of want to feel what happens when I just start with this shape. So I'm going to begin by folding. I've got these blocks here that I could change into different arrangements so that I can let my arms and shoulders relax. We'll start here, we'll hang out for a bit. You just never know that they're super wily, and they, like the Wile E. Coyote of the cartoons, they try to find ways to trip me up all the time. Me being the roadrunner in this situation. Although it might be the other way around in reality. So I'm just kind of loving on my pose a little bit, kind of leaning side to side. Giving myself a little bit of extra, you know, like sometimes that left side feels better to lean into. Take a few breaths and then do the other side. Come back to the middle. I like sort of giving myself a little kind of spectrum of sensation when I'm holding a pose. Not too fidgety, but just enough to feel like some goodness. Get kind of tuned in to what's going on with the back of my hip and the back of my spine and the area between my ribs and my spine. Those are all places I like to check in with. We're going to stay for one more minute. Take a big, big inhale. Fill up really big and come all the way up. Oh, and then lean back and let your legs straighten out. Give yourself a little bit of movement. Oh. Oh, I like to let my back kind of change shape slowly. So we're going to take the legs out wide. Now when I do my legs out wide, I like to have a blanket. So I'm going to take a blanket and roll it up and put it underneath my knees. because I find that more comfortable. And we're going to kind of be in this wide-legged position for a bit. We're going to do different things while we're here. So if you want, you can put something underneath your sit bones, like another folded blanket or a little pillow, just to make it a little more comfortable to sit. If the sit bones, like if you have a harder surface underneath you, it might be good. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick a leg. I'm just kind of checking it out, like, do I have a preference? I think I like this one better. So just sitting up tall and turning, we're just going to pause there. And I have short arms, so they don't quite reach, when I reach them all the way down to touch the floor, it feels like I have to mess with my shoulder. So if I put them up on blocks, then my shoulders can relax a little better. So just kind of pausing and sinking in. Like for me, like this, we're kind of approaching like that end of that first minute. Sometimes I can twist just a little bit more and it still feels good. Because my spine has adapted to the twist. So if you want to explore that in your own body, you can do that. We're going to stay here for about 3 more breaths. And then we're going to fold over the leg. Now you can fold straight down or you can turn sideways and fold. It might take some time. You might only want to have your arm overhead for a little bit of time. I'm going to do a little bit of each. So I'm going to start just folding forward this direction. And then we're going to stay here for about 3 minutes. So after about 1.5 minutes, I'm going to switch it around to the side. Now if this gets a little tedious, you can always bend the leg that you're not leaning over if you want to. Take a big breath. This is that halfway mark, so I'm gonna switch sides, or switch directions, but you may want to stay where you are if you're liking that better. I'm gonna keep my arm over my head for about half of this, and then I'm gonna drop it behind my back. But I like this opportunity to kind of stretch through the side wall of my obliques and through my latissimus dorsi muscle, and just, it just feels nice. Back of my arm, a little tricep. It might be nice if you did a bunch of push-ups earlier to get that tricep all stretched out. And then I also like, when I wrap my arm behind my back, then I get this really nice stretch across this kind of front part of my shoulder, and through a little bit of the arm bone, where there's some attachments right up here. Let my head kind of hang so I can get this part of my trapezius muscle. Oh, it's good. So I got 30 seconds left here. Now, because I've been letting my head kind of drop over, sometimes that makes my neck a little sensitive. So I'm going to take a nice big breath, and I'm going to put my left hand under my head. And then I'm going to come all the way up and kind of let my head kind of be secured by that hand. And then I'm going to start by just unwinding my neck, bending the legs. And then kind of slowly I'll get to a little bit more of this sort of back and forth. Some little cat-cowy, twisty shapes, just to kind of loosen everything up, move around. Before we do the other side. I'm not quite ready to go to the other side yet. I'm gonna wait for just a couple more breaths. That's feeling better. I just kind of go by how my joints and my hip feel and how my spine sort of feels. Does it feel like it's kind of come back around? So now I'm sitting up and just turning the opposite direction. I'm just going to start wherever it's, stops. Like, oh, that's about where it wants to stop without picking up my pelvis. And then over time, it might be that it'll invite me in a little deeper. We'll see. Part of the fun to me in some ways of yoga practice is like, let's see what happens. let's do this shape and see what happens. I don't always know. Sometimes I know, but not always. Feeling that out now as I'm kind of coming in to that first minute, a little over the first minute for me this time. Just noticing, like, is there a little more room or not? The ice cream man is outside. I can hear the sound of the weird music they play in the truck. Never actually, like, had it myself together enough to run out there and get ice cream. I just heard the truck, and by the time I get myself together and get up and get some money, they're gone. Children must be faster. Anyway, coming back to the yoga from my temporary distraction by the ice cream man. Noticing like a little bit of sensitivity in my neck. So we're on that like last little tiny bit here before I am gonna want, like, we've got 30 seconds before we're gonna fold forward. So I'm just noticing maybe it would be better for me not to turn my head all the way, right? So you just kind of check in. This is one of the things I like about Yin, is this kind of opportunity to like go slow enough to notice things. When I'm moving, I don't always notice like, oh, I'm a little bit more stiff on that side than I was on the other side. But when I do yin, I often do. So we're gonna take a nice big breath. And then we're gonna fold, and again, I'm gonna go forward first, and then I'm gonna switch it up in about 1.5 minutes or so. So we have a little bit of both. You do you. Seconds, and I'm going to flip this baby to a little bit. I like noticing too, like, does my pelvis shift? Is one leg a little bit more interesting, a little more tight, a little more resistant than the other? Usually my right side's a little tighter, so leaning over my right leg, I'm switching it up now, always makes it a little interesting for me. Like, does it feel more sensitive today? Usually the answer is yes, but not always. Actually, sometimes, like lately, maybe because of the way I've been sleeping, which is not very well, but stress can do weird things to your mind in the middle of the night. In any case, I've noticed lately that my left hip is kind of coming back, or coming closer to the sort of tension patterns that my right hip has, maybe because of my sleep patterns, or maybe for other reasons, I don't know. It's interesting. So, I'm gonna give that guy a little chance to drop off here. We're gonna stay for about 30 more seconds. Take a big old breath. And again, I'm going to put my right hand right here on my head so I can just inhale and then come on up with that little bit of extra support. So my neck muscles don't have to do all the work right away, because they were really stretched out there. And now, I'm going to lean back and bend my knees and bring my legs to the center. Give myself a little movement. Now, this movement is going to start out kind of cat-cowy like this, and it's going to wind up cat-cowy on my knees. So, when you're ready, you can join me in a similar situation where we will do some cat-cowy stuff. Sometimes some of these shapes feel familiar, like that shape does not feel familiar. The rounded back shape, yep, that feels familiar. That one, not as familiar. So I like to kind of do a little hip wag, or kind of just change it up a little bit, just make it a little freer, a little more fluid. I'm going to start with my right leg, and you don't have to be done yet. If you want to do a few more rounds of cat, you can. Actually, that's feeling kind of good, so I might join you with that right there. Then kind of hugging in through the abs, so I'm going to take my right leg back behind me and reach out through it, and then the left arm up in front, and I just stretch those two away from each other. Oh, it feels good. Now I'm going to put the fingertips of my left hand on the ground. I'm going to hook my leg up like a scorpion tail and then bring it under and bring it back and bring it under. And I'm letting my head float back and my chest get really puffy here and then bring it under. To do that, I'm squeezing my shoulder blades together right there. And then I'm going to bring this leg all the way forward so that I'm in a lunge shape. Now to begin with, I'm going to be a little bit light on this lunge. So I'm starting out with my hip pretty much right over my knee, okay? And then this foot's a little bit further in front, and I'm gonna leave it like that because I'm gonna go forward and see how far in makes sense. And then I'm gonna come backward. Now sometimes this can be a little irritating on the kneecap. So if you need to, you can put some blankets under your shin bone. So the kneecap is actually not completely touching the floor. So the shin is bearing more of the weight. And that'll take some of the pressure out of your kneecap. So you can give that a try with a blanket. And then come on back. I'm going to do it one more time. Now, once I get here, I'm going to stay a while. And breathe. See how it goes. Sometimes it feels really good to hang out. And now I'm going to add a little bit of like a, kind of like a little turn in that way twist. And then I'm going to take a little bit of a turning this way twist. And then I'm going to come back to the center and I'm going to kick my front leg straight and fold over top of it. So I've got this little, now for me when I fold directly over the center as close as I can get, I feel this more in my outer hamstring. There's two heads of the muscle back there, so it's really almost like two muscles instead of one, and they're quite powerful. So see what you feel. And then I'm going to switch this up a little bit, and I'm going to go for these inside ones. So I'm going to bring myself more to the diagonal, and almost like I'm going into a down dog, I'm going to let myself kind of fold into that diagonal. I can bend my knee to take some of the pressure out, or straighten it to add it on. Oh, I love this. This is my favorite thing this week. This might not be your jam, but dang, I like it. Take one more breath. And then I'm just going to bring this leg back where it came from. Oh, give it a little shake. And then come back to that all fours position and check out. See what happens. Oh. It just feels so good. Like my whole hip feels fluffy and lighter. Just, oh, it's nice. Now I don't know if that happened for you, but it's kind of groovy. So let's try it on the other side, see what happens. Maybe it'll happen again. So we're gonna reach that left leg out and the right arm out. Really extend, and then I'm going to put my fingertips on the floor, hook that leg over, so I get this little bit of a back bend, and then I'm going to curl it in. A little bit of back bend, shoulder blades coming together, pushing my heart a little forward, and then come in. And then one more time, a little back bend, just like a wee. It's almost like up dog, but not. And then bring that leg forward. Oh. And again, I'm going to start my lunge with knee and hip right over each other, just lined up. And then I'm going to take this foot a little further out in front of me, so I've got somewhere to go. And this side I know is usually a little more sensitive, so I'm going to go slower on this side and see how things go. I feel like I need to kind of realign my hips a little bit, so I'm going to do that. And then ease my way in and come on back. And then ease my way in. I'm going right to the spot that was interesting, right there. Which is not as far as I was on my left side. And so, outside of the fact that my props are collapsing around me, which made that a little more interesting. Things happen in yoga, guys. You just gotta go with the flow. In any case, it's a little more spicy. So I'm just kind of backing off a little bit. And then I'm gonna add this kind of, just a little bit of a twist going this way, see how that changes things. I'm going to do a little bit of a twist going this way, see how that changes things. I like this one a lot. to come back to the middle and I'm going to back up my hip. And for now, I'm going to stay right over the center line. So again, I get this kind of area right here in my hamstrings where these two big heads of my biceps femoris live. This feels kind of good. And then I'm going to go to this diagonal and try to get a little more into these inner hamstrings. And I might feel that in my adductors as well. Kind of fold it into this diagonal. Oh. Okay, take one more breath. And we're going to kind of come back and bring this leg back and give it a little shake. Oh. Put it down for a second and see what happened. Do they both feel good? It does in my world. Now I'm going to turn around kind of so I can face a little more in your guys' direction, your direction. And I'm going to come into a Sphinx. Now to start with, I'm going to do a bent knee version of this, which gets a little more into my quadriceps. And I'm gonna let them rest on this pillow behind me, but you can also do straight legs, okay? So I'm propped up on my elbows. Can you see? I'm propped up on my elbows. I hope you can see. Here, I'll go this way, a little bit closer to the back end, and then I think it'll be more obvious. Now, I've got my elbows a little bit in, and like if you have a bed nearby or a couch, you can put your shins up on the bed or the couch. And I'm just going to pick up my legs and let the front of my hip really melt. When I bring my elbows slightly in and a little bit forward of my shoulder relaxes a little bit better. And you can do whatever, like your hands can be down or they can be in the center. If it's too intense, go down. Bring it to crocodile and lower down. If you want a little bit more, push up to a seal. Right? Kind of finding your way in here to a Sphinx of your choice. Now I have really tight quads, so even just bending my knee to 90 degrees is enough for me to feel a little bit of a release at the front of my hip and on the top of my thigh. And so I could almost do this instead of the half saddle. It's so snugly on that top of my thigh. When I was a kid, I called this pose watching television. Kind of giving myself this little propped up chin rest. We're going to stay for about 30 more seconds here, and then we're going to shake this up a bit. So take a big breath. Linger with a little. Now what I'm going to do is roll to my side and just take one of my legs up like that. And then I'm going to see if I can slide it out a little bit farther to the side like a little frog leg. I'm going to leave this other knee bent, and if possible I'm just going to lay down in this little crocodile. You can also do the Sphinx or the seal here with your upper body. So it's like a little half a frog. Right on. Hopefully you can see all of that. I hope so. about another minute. Just a little bit longer, about 30 more seconds. I'm gonna just prop myself up a little bit here. Give that back leg a little wiggle. And then I'm gonna switch which side I'm doing. But before I go crazy, I'm just gonna get out of the first side. So nice big inhale, big exhale. Roll to the side. Oh, undo that. Come on back onto the front. Give it a moment. I like to feel it. Now, that pose for some of us is not that spicy. For me, it's not particularly spicy while I'm holding it, but when I let it go, I feel a big shift. Like the front of my pelvis gets closer to the ground, the thigh feels longer, there's just kind of a nice release. But because it's more targeting the deeper muscles, the kind of support structure of the hip, you don't feel it as much. What was that, Sarah?
No.
So I'm on the other side. And I've just brought my leg up. And I've got a little bit of furniture in my way, so I'm just adjusting around it. It's the way it is when you do yoga in your living room. And then, oh, I'm going to try to just relax. Stay up for one more minute, or just a tiny bit over a minute. So this is that last 30 seconds, so I'm just going to prop myself back up into my sphinxy shape. Just because it's a little bit more spicy, and I'm not going to stay very long. We're going to take a nice big breath. And then I'm going to kind of roll backwards and undo that. And then I'm going to give myself enough room to kind of straighten back out. So I'm going to just inch my way a little bit forward. And then so I can straighten my legs. And I'm going to roll onto my side for a moment. Now, I need this arm. So if you notice that like putting your head on the floor is kind of ridiculous, then you'll want to get something to use under your head. I'm going to use this pillow because I like it, it's soft. So I'm going to put that under my head. I need to make sure I've got a little bit of room, so I'm going to go this way a little bit more. And hopefully you'll still be able to see what I'm up to. Okay, so my legs are stretched out, my hips are on top, my shoulders are on top. This arm's straight out in front, and then this arm's going to come with it. And what I'm going to do is take this arm over my head like a giant rainbow, And I'm gonna stretch all the way back here. And when I get to the point where I'm about chest height, I'm gonna come all back, okay? I gotta go a little bit further forward. I'm still running into furniture. All right, here we go. I'm gonna use my core to stabilize, and I'm gonna use my arm to create this little shoulder opener. So up and around, and back. Up and around, hold on, core. Up and around. I like the combo of the core work and the other, but usually I don't do it that way. Coming around. Okay, now I'm gonna do it one more time because I really like it, but I'm gonna go really slow. And when I get to here, I'm gonna turn this into a twist. So I'm gonna bring my knees in, and I'm gonna roll all the way onto my back. So I can take my pillow out and roll my upper back to the ground. Now my pillow is gonna come in handy over here. So if you have a block or something or a blanket, you can use that. I'm gonna hook my top leg over the bottom leg like that and just let it drape, because that pulls just a little bit more in this kind of really deep layered up tissue on my outer hip. And then I'm gonna do just a little bit, like I'm taking my arm like a cactus like this, or a little bent position, and I'm gonna lay that on the ground so that I just get a little chest stretch right here. And then I'm gonna turn my head away from that so that the muscles in the side of my neck just get a little bit of a release going the other direction. You can do it the opposite way. You can look the other way. Usually this one, it feels a little more soothing to my neck, and the other way for me is a little more energizing. So I tend to do the more energizing one earlier in the day, and this more soothing one later in the day, so that my practice has like some ebb and flow that sort of resembles the time. So we're gonna stay here for about another minute, not too long, but just enough to be juicy. Take a nice big breath. And I'm going to bring my head back to the center, and I'm just going to let my legs travel back so that I'm laying on my back. And then I'm going to rinse out my arm, and I'm going to rinse out my legs and hips a little bit with these little kind of windshield wipery deliciousness. I'm pretty sure I just made up a word. In any case, welcome to my world, yogis. Ridiculous. Anywho, I gotta do the other side. So I am going to spin around 180 degrees because that'll be easier to see what I'm up to. One of the really interesting things to me about teaching yoga on the computer in digital form is having to think about the view of the camera. It's a different part of teaching yoga. Okay, so I'm on my side. I'm gonna engage a little bit through my core. What I mean by that is, it's like you're trying to hug the sides of your waist in, and then just a little bit, you're pulling the rib cage towards the front and towards the back. So the back of my ribs and the front of my ribs are drawing towards each other, and the sides of my waist are coming in. And that engages the deepest abdominals that are really about stabilizing us. They don't move us, but they stabilize us. And that's what we're after. So hold in there. I'm going to take this arm up and make this beautiful shape with my shoulder. Now, if your shoulder is sensitive, don't do the same range of motion. Maybe your range of motion goes to there, right? And not as far as mine. So you do the range of motion that's right for you. Because ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to get some movement and some release in some of these muscles that overlap on our shoulder and cause some adhesions and some stickiness and congestion. Just trying to get them all to move. So the range of motion is appropriate for whatever is your current circumstances. And maybe as things start to loosen up, your range of motion gets bigger. I don't know. Oh, let's do it one more time. So we're gonna come in up and over. I'm just hugging it a little bit through my core to keep myself stable. And then I'm gonna take this to my twist, right on. So I'm gonna bend my knees, slip out my pillow, turn my upper back down to the floor. Now I'm leaving my arm in this kind of cactus shape and letting it lay out here to the side, trying to find just the right spot. Sometimes up higher, yep, up higher is better. And then I'm gonna put my pillow in here so I can drape my top leg over my bottom leg. I'm turning my head that way, and that just feels really nice. Lovely kind of practice. Hopefully this is lovely practice. For me, it's been lovely. That's the other part of this journey that's been really funny, is mostly what I'm doing is narrating my own practice and just inviting you guys to it. And in the past, I would design classes that I thought would be things that you guys would like, as opposed to just, hey, come on a journey with me. But so that it's making me grow a little bit as a yoga teacher. So I appreciate you guys being with me on this journey. So we're going to stay for about 30 more seconds. So take a big breath. Let go with a big we're just going to take this top leg and bring it to the center. And then unwind everything. Give your arm a little rinse out. Give your legs a little rinse out. Little hip movement, little hip rinse. Now, what we're going to do to end just before Shavasana here is we're going to do a little happy baby pose. This is not the most attractive yoga pose on the planet Earth, but sometimes it's kind of nice. And so you can do this really more in a more gentle way by just kind of hugging your knees, a little open in the knees. This is called puppy dog pose, where you just kind of grab your shins. And then if you want to do the full version of the happy baby, you can put your hands on the inside of your feet or on the outside of your feet. Okay, and hang on. Kind of digging that puppy dog variation. I'm just going to kind of hang onto my shins and let my toes and heels come closer together. And I like, instead of my sacrum lifting up and my low back disappearing into the floor, I like to keep my pelvis more neutral. And then there's a kind of nice release across that lower back part of the sacrum. Sacrum, maybe a little bit more into the lumbar area of your low back. I usually like to have a little pillow underneath my legs. So in a moment, but not yet, I'm going to take this blanket and put that under my legs. And if you like something under your head, you can get those things as well. So I'm going to let go, starting with just letting go. And then I'm going to bring my toes to the ground. And then I'm going to let my feet find the floor. And as I windshield wiper, then I'm going to get my blanket and roll it back up where I had it. And I'm going to stick that guy under here. Now, I like to pull the blanket right up against my thighs to start with. And I might wind up pushing it away. But it's easier for me to start high and go and push it back, because I can just kind of jiggle it into place. And then once my legs are straight, I like to feel, like, does it feel relaxed here? And I feel like I need just a tiny bit less. I'm going to push it back just a notch. Yeah, that's better. So what I'm interested in is this joint getting soft. And then I'm going to use my yoga mat to make the tiniest little roll of support underneath these bones right here on the back of my skull. And you might not have noticed those bones, but mine are somewhat prominent. And having this little bit of mat, just cupping those little joints, feels more relaxing. And then we're going to do what's called corpse pose, y'all. Corpse pose. Oh, which I love, but if you're not used to laying still, it might be tricky. Do it anyway. It's worth it. Honestly, I could probably stay in Shavasana and just take a nap. I could just easily turn this into a nap. But instead, I'm going to notice my breath, and I invite you to do the same. Take a breath so deep you can feel it all the way to your tiptoes. Let it go with a big ah. And then I'm going to wiggle my fingers and toes because this is I love this little tiny rippling motion. And then turn that into some wrist and ankle movement. Stretch things and move things. Stretch things and move things. And then stretch bigger things. Bring the legs in. Oh, and give it a hug. Oh. Now, I'm going to roll to my side because I prefer that over rocking myself up. But if you like to rock up, rock.